All right. Hello, everyone. Hope you're having a great NFC conference. It's nice to see so many beautiful faces, especially in the bear market. We're all online. It's nice to see people in person. So yeah, today I'll be presenting on how and why social media is broken and how we're trying to fix it at Cyberconnect. My name is Nazih. I originally was not meant to be presenting, but my coworker didn't get his visa in time, so here I am. I'm the head of data at Cyberconnect, decentralized social graph protocol. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. So I'm sure many of you have seen this countless times at this point, but a good way to first introduce the problem of social media, or like the problems with social media, is to introduce this kind of like mental model of how to think of the history of the web. And it essentially breaks up the web into three discrete phases. I won't go into the details of each, but essentially Web 1 was read, Web 2, read and write, and then now Web 3 is read, write, and own. The important thing to note here is that most of modern day social media giants were created in the Web 2 phase, and so the concession that we had to make as users is we gave up ownership of that data for them to store them in centralized servers, and because there was no decentralized technology or way to verify ownership and access control. And so now these companies, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, they essentially have entire control over our data, how it's used, where it's stored, and who has access to it. And we think that's a major flaw. And many of you might be thinking, yeah, sure, them owning our data sucks, but Twitter's still great, Instagram's still great. Like, I don't really care. Like, these companies can have my data as long as they give me this free, great experience. But next, I'll talk about reasons why we believe that it is a major flaw for this data to be centralized, and some of the real impacts it has on you as users and as content creators as well. So breaking up the major flaws with current social media into four major buckets. One is censorship. Two is lost creator value. Three is data silos and redundant data. And then four are misaligned incentives and stifled innovation. So starting off with number one, censorship. Censorship can come in many different forms. I'm sure many of you have either experienced this directly or like people you follow, creators, politicians, whatever it is, can get censored on social media. A very direct form of this is just straight up deplatforming, where they ban your account. And you can see on this image on the right, last year, almost slightly over a year ago, or any emails from YouTube. They had over 150,000 subscribers, over 10,000 hours of content, and all of that was just swept, rugged from under their feet. So clearly there's a massive impact. Years of work can be taken away. Or if you're an NFT creator or someone that makes their living off of Instagram or something, you can lose your livelihood just at the whim of these companies. Another one is moderation. So these platforms have billions of users, yet fundamentally the moderation comes down to the decision of very few people. So they essentially, with that moderation, are able to control political discourse, what people see and can't see. And so that's a huge problem and can really lead to some dystopian type of future. And the third type of censorship that we see on social media platforms today is shadow banning, and this might be the most dangerous type because nowadays all of our feeds are algorithmically driven, and so another way to ban you is to just reduce your voice and make it harder for people to reach you. And this one's really dangerous because it's hard for you to really tell when you're being shadow banned, and there's no way for you to really verify that, or since the algorithm is closed source. And so this is a huge problem with modern day social media. The second major bucket is lost creator value, and I'm sure you all know that the amount of value being created by content creators on social media today is massive. It's estimated like to be over 400 billion, and current companies like Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, they're worth hundreds of billions of dollars. So I just did a quick Google search, and $40 billion of revenue was made by Instagram in 2023 so far. That's over $300 per user. Yet, up until very recently, there was pretty much no way to monetize on Instagram. And even modern day monetization of short form video content is pretty minor. So just a sliver of that 40 billion is being transferred to actual content creators, which are the ones creating the value on the platform. A good explanation of this, or way of thinking of this, also was written by Chris Dixon, famous A16Z partner, and he talks about Web 2 versus Web 3 as take rates. And as you can see from this, like one part of that tweet thread, like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter essentially take 100% of all the revenue. YouTube 45, Google, Apple 30, and now we're seeing with Web 2 things like OpenSea charging 2.5 and Blur even less. So that lost creator value is another major flaw in the current social media platforms. Third is data silos. A good metaphor that is often used to talk about data silos is just like walled gardens. The way to describe social media platforms are these walled gardens. Essentially, like inside of them, you feel like you have all this value, but as soon as you try to remove your data or move it to another platform, make it incredibly difficult for you. And there's a pretty interesting kind of comic on the top right where like this like kind of I guess tech social CEO is telling the user, hey, feel free to use our ad platform any way you like. But then there's these walls with barbed wire preventing you from actually leaving. And I'm sure you've experienced this if you try to migrate or export some of your data. So this can lead to minor inconveniences like, okay, I sign up on Facebook, I put my bio, my name, things like that. Then a new social platform, I type that in again. I follow new people again. So that could be interpreted as a minor inconvenience because you just have to do the same thing over and over. But I think there's other inconveniences that are actually much larger, and that's the loss of composability and interoperability between different social applications. So imagine today you follow someone on Instagram, you follow an artist, right? That does not influence what you see on Spotify, right? On Spotify, it's completely different. Like those two systems don't talk to each other, and so you can't get recommended, a song based on your interests or your social graph within another platform. Similarly, if you listen to a podcast on Spotify, it's not going to influence your Substack recommendations. So that's largely because of these walled gardens. They don't want that data to be interoperable without them benefiting monetarily from it. So that's another major flaw. And yeah, I'm sure you've seen, when you sign up for a new app, it asks you what are your interests, because there is that cold start problem where they don't have data on you yet, and they can't use the other platforms because they're stopping them from it. So you have to go through this ridiculous questionnaire to try and figure out who you are. And the last major flaw are misaligned incentives and stifled innovation. This might be the largest ones, but it's clear that the incentives are misaligned, right? These platforms, they're optimizing for ad revenue and they're optimizing for your attention, right? They want to maximize the money they're getting from advertisers, so they're prioritizing them over you as the user. And they sensationalize coverage because they know that that's what drives attention. On the other hand, users just want to optimize for a good experience. They want to learn, they want to grow, they want to just benefit from it without spending hours on end looking at ads, looking at content that they don't really care about. And so one way these platforms are doing this is they're keeping all these algorithms closed source, right? They don't want you to know how the fact that they're optimizing actually for ad spend, for attention, right? They just want you to continue to use the app. And so the incentives in this ad-based model are completely misaligned, and that's a major flaw. And on a similar note, this also stifles innovation because basically these walled gardens, right? They're trying to maintain all the data within their platform, and they're trying to keep you coming back to Instagram, keep coming back to Facebook. So over time, all these social platforms have slowly restricted how you can use their API, whether you can pull the image data, pull the tweets, pull whatever it is, and integrate it into another application. They've done this because if they allow you to pull all that data and build another kind of front end for Twitter or another front end for Instagram, then that stops you from looking at the ads. That stops you from going to their website. And so A good example of this is actually Twitter. So in the early days of Twitter, their API in 2006, 2010, their API was like free for all. You just need a username, password, and developers could essentially access all Twitter data. And the third-party ecosystem and apps built on top of Twitter at that time were flourishing. Like a lot of modern-day features on Twitter, retweets, code tweets, even like the iPhone client were built by third parties because of how much access they had, the third-party access to the API. But over time, Twitter internalized these features, internalized all this, and then slowly started gaining access more and more because they didn't want these, Twitter bots or whatever, Twitter front ends to drive people away from Twitter. And so this is all culminated, and now in 2023, we see that Twitter only offers 3 usable API plans, the lowest at which starts at $42,000 a month. Anything else, you can't really build an application as a small developer on Twitter. So this blocks out a lot of innovation. 99% of developers can't access it. So yeah, we've talked about all the issues with Web 2 social, and just to summarize that, the TLDR of the problem is there's this negative feedback loop where users have to continue to use these companies' apps because they have a monopoly on the data, and then this forces creators to continue to contribute data to those platforms because they want to get the maximum reach. And it's this negative feedback loop essentially leads to continued aggregation of power in the existing incumbents and less innovation in the space. Web3 can fix this. It doesn't necessarily change the way social networking happens. It just adds an important dimension, which we saw on the first slide, of ownership to that data. And so it makes it interoperable. And this is largely driven by the public-private key technology and blockchains, the open ledger. So some of the key things that Web3 provides are, 1, self-sovereignty. This just means that you own your data, you own your access to it, and there's no single centralized party or platform that can restrict your access, delete it, or algorithmically reduce its reach. Interoperable and portability. Again, if social data is stored in a public ledger or accessible through a public ledger, that means you can easily go back to that case of your Twitter or Instagram likes, follows, influencing something like a decentralized Spotify's recommendations, which in turn influence your newsletter, and all of that can interoperate. And you can also have increased composability, meaning that you can say that, okay, like if you like and follow on Instagram, I'll send you this free music NFT on this new Spotify platform, and you can see new ways of programming between these different applications. It also opens the door to a marketplace for algorithms, right? Where if all this data is shared in a public ledger, which is just like a shared backend for all these applications, you can see a future where the algorithms themselves become a product that people can offer. Like, hey, I have this type of algorithm that optimizes for learning, or optimizes for art, or optimizes for this, and you can have a marketplace for that. So yeah, coming to who I am and like what Cyberconnect is. Cyberconnect is a decentralized social network, social graph protocol, building infrastructure for developers to create social applications where they can own their digital identity, content, and connections. There's 3 major components. One is the cyber profile, which is a decentralized digital identity in the form of an ERC-721 token. And it essentially stores all of the fundamental data of a profile that you'd expect from any social platform. So it stores your bio, metadata, your handle, things like that. So that is kind of like your gateway into the social dApp ecosystem built on top of the protocol. To clarify, Cyberconnect itself is not a social app. It's not like Instagram or Twitter. It's just building the infrastructure for other developers to build those on top of it. The second component is the Cyberconnect social graph, which essentially is also formed as NFTs. So whenever you like, subscribe, follow someone, all these connections that are made, these more important and monetizable and valuable connections are minted as NFTs on chain. So that adds to that composability aspect and the open data aspect. The third, which we're currently working on right now, is building a non-custodial smart contract wallet. which essentially is gonna solve the poor UX UI problem that we currently have, which is, you have to download MetaMask, put some ETH in, so you can pay the gas to do these on-chain transactions. Having our Cyber wallet, which is like a social first, or like a social focused wallet, not a financial one, will make this a lot easier to onboard new users into the space of Web3 social. So yeah, our goal is to empower developers to build these applications. And some examples, there are some applications currently building on top of Cyberconnect. So we're currently deployed on Ethereum and BNB chain. We've seen the most traction on BNB chain, actually, since a lot of East Asia is very strongly pro kind of like this new Web3 social movement. So we've seen a lot of traction there. There's been over 900,000 profiles minted, 7.5 million Wests issued. Wests are our form of SBTs that we issue as part of one of our flagship apps. And so like any of these apps, like I don't know if you use Favor, Link3, like all of them interoperate, and like your profile data can be shared between it, your follows, your connections, and yeah, the ecosystem is growing. This is like a quick maybe example application that a flagship product that we built internally, which is it's building out a lot of different features on top of Web3, but I'll go into some of them here. The core component of Link3 is essentially, it's similar to Linktree, so it's a link in bio type of thing where you can add to your Twitter, Instagram. The difference being that it's Web3 focused. You can showcase your NFTs, and a lot of things are verifiable. So you can verify that you have this amount of this token, or that your account age is this long, or you're the owner of this NFT collection, the creator of it, the minter, whatever it be. And so this is the main part of Link3. So you can have that link in bio that's more Web3 focused. Another key feature of like the Link3 social platform is Web3 enabled AMAs and events. And so basically you can use Link3 to connect it directly to your Twitter spaces, your Discord AMAs, to essentially set some requirements like, hey, like if you attend my Twitter space, you get to mint free NFTs, and that showcases kind of like the loyalty of your users. They're attending your different events. And you can also submit raffles. So adding a lot of like on-chain Web3 native experiences to existing social apps. And we started doing that just because we realized we need to get users in, and the first way to do it is to access them through their usual medium of like Twitter, Discord, yeah. And so, yeah, these are some examples. Again, you can issue SBTs, NFTs, add rewards. You can also do posts on Link3, so it's very similar to Mirror, right? You can do collects, paid collects, limited collects, time-based collects, and you can also, we just added a new feature where you can actually add like an AI-based quiz to your collection. So basically, like if you write a blog post, and instead of having anyone be able to collect it, they need to go through a multiple choice question to see if they've actually read your content. So that you know that, hey, people that are actually like engaging collecting, they're just not doing it purely to like try to potentially get monetary gain from it, but they actually are interested in my content and they went through the effort of reading my article. So that's a new feature that we built in. Yeah, so this is just one application. I don't have time to go through a lot of the other applications, but I'll share more info later that you can look into. But yeah, some closing remarks. Basically, again, social media today is broken, and social media today is actually even more centralized than the financial system was when Bitcoin was created in 2009, right? And these companies, that control all of our social data, they've monopolized the profits, and creators are losing out immensely. We believe these problems can be solved by decentralizing social, the same way Bitcoin and Ethereum decentralize the financial system, adding composability, adding ownership, adding interoperability. So putting our social data on public blockchains, we believe will turn social media from a zero-sum game, meaning no one wants to share their data, to a positive-sum game. When one application grows in a Web3 ecosystem or Web3 social, all the applications benefit because that means more users directly connect to their app. So that's where the positive sum aspect comes in, and we think once you get that flywheel going and more users come in and see the value of adding those Web3 native features, it can grow to surpass existing incumbents, and content creators can finally get their fair share of what's being generated in value, and the advertising model can be broken to more meaningful things that maximize user satisfaction. And yeah, that's the end of my talk. If you have, here's some links. If you have more questions or want to figure out how to mint a profile, you can do one for free. Just I'll give you a QR code after this. Forgot to put it on the slide. But yeah, I'll take any questions if anyone has some. If we have time. Yeah. Go. Yeah. You. Can we get a mic for the questions? Or should I just give this one?
Thank you very much. As a lawyer, I have maybe 1,000 questions for your social media. I think the idea is really good, but have you thought already about like GDPR or Digital Service Act obligation you may have? Like the obligation to moderate the content on this kind of media, as it is decentralized. How is it possible to do that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So one of the fundamental aspects of a decentralized social network and the content on it is that the protocol itself is not in control or cannot control what content is posted. So anything in the world can be content, and that's obviously not great, right? You don't want like horrible things posted, but the people that control what is shown and what isn't is done at the application layer. So say you build like an Instagram tomorrow and you want to build it on top of this Web3 social data. You on that layer on the application, you building the Instagram that's accessing that backend, you'll set up an algorithm that can detect, okay, like, is this obscene content? Is this like someone getting killed? Is it whatever it is? Like, you'll have to filter that at the application layer. And we believe that's the right approach because fundamentally all these rules are based on region, subjectivity, like every like no one gets to decide what's right and what's wrong. And that's the same with our financial transactions, right? Like there's things like Tornado Cash and whatever, like those things we can't at the protocol layer say who's right and who's wrong. We need to let applications and people building on top decide for themselves, and they can be compliant with GDPR based on their filtering mechanisms.
So on moderation, you will still have a moderation by a private entity. It will not be like fully decentralized, like.
Yeah. So moderation is done at the application layer, and if you go to the platform and you see they're moderating stuff that you like to see and they're removing it, someone else tomorrow can go build a competing application using the same data, right? So that's the difference between existing platforms. So today, if Facebook or Instagram decides to start moderating and removing certain content from a certain political party, there's no one that can just take Instagram's data or Facebook's data and build another one without the filtering of that political information. But when it's decentralized, then you have options, right? You can see like 5 different apps that all look similar, but like they have a different algorithm or a different moderation mechanism. And those can be compliant within Europe for one of them, right, and focus on this type of thing, and one can be compliant with another jurisdiction's policies. So that's how it works. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, partially.
Okay, thanks guys. I'm sorry, we'll have to cut it there. But if Nazih is available, you can meet him side and ask him all the questions you want.